Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some severe thunderstorms in the eastern third of the United States, especially for the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. We're going to have some colder temperatures behind it, not awfully cold, but it will be a few degrees below the average. And then in the southern part of the storm for the southeast, we will have a bit of milder temperatures out ahead of the system, but even behind the storm, it will actually turn a bit chillier in that spot of the country as well. So let's get right into it. And before we actually get into the weather part of this, just want to say that if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll be responding within a couple of hours of you posting them. If you have any video suggestions or you have a weather photo that you want me to feature on the channel, just send an email over to my email address, which is right over here. It's also in the bottom of the description of the video. So if you have any special requests or you want me to change something up with the format of the video or anything like that, just send it over to that email address. But anything else, it's just better if you send it in the comments, because I check those more regularly than that email address. So starting off the National Weather Service page, you can see that we have a few red flag warnings in California, and then we have some freeze watches up into Texas and Oklahoma. That's in the panhandles of both of those states. We have some freeze warnings up for parts of Utah, Colorado, and western North Dakota, as well as some frost advisories in northwestern Kansas, northeastern Colorado, and one county in Nebraska as well. But once you get east of there, we have basically nothing going on in terms of watches and warnings. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 98 degrees in Zapata, Texas, with a low temperature 14 miles west-southwest of McKay, Idaho, at -3 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the first below zero temperature that we've seen so far this winter and fall season. Highest rainfall report was in Newell, South Dakota, where they got 2.68 inches of rainfall. The highest snowfall report was also in that same part of South Dakota, 3 miles east-northeast of Deadwood, South Dakota, where they got 27 inches of reported snowfall. There was really a belt within this area right here that just saw a ton of snowfall. It was over 20 inches for most spots. Deadwood is in an elevated part of South Dakota, the Black Hills over there, but still, it is very impressive for this time of year to be seeing that amount of snowfall. So that's all from that storm from the past couple of days. If you look at the 72-hour snowfall accumulation, you can see that we actually do have a few spots, and you can kind of see that orange color for a little bit of South Dakota, Montana, and Wyoming, where you have 24 plus inches. But for the majority of these areas, you're looking at over a foot of snow. So really, really impressive snowfall totals. And this is not all high elevation. Basically from eastern Montana, northeastern Wyoming, western South Dakota, and western North Dakota, with the exception of the Black Hills, we're looking at pretty much just flat terrain with some rolling hills. But we really don't have anything in terms of huge mountains in these areas, again, with the exception of the Black Hills in South Dakota. So the fact that these areas still got 6 to 10 inches of snowfall or even more is actually very, very impressive for this time of year especially. Here's a look at the Storm Prediction Center page. So we're going to start talking about the severe weather. We already have a slight risk up for the Ohio Valley, so that extends from Ohio all the way down to Arkansas, Missouri, and Tennessee. So we have kind of a strip right here of the elevated area of severe weather. We have a 5% chance of tornadoes in that brown color. We actually have 2 spots, so one in Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, and Arkansas, as well as another one for Ohio. And again, I mentioned this on a couple of videos ago, but I'll say it again here. This does not mean that there's a 5% risk that within somewhere in that entire region that there's one tornado. This means that within a 25-mile radius of any one given location, so if you were to pick any spot on that brown area, there's a 5% chance that you would have a tornado within that region. So when you add that up, there's a fairly good chance that we see at least 1 or 2 tornadoes over this entire event. So this is not going to be an outbreak break, but we could definitely see 1 or 2 tornadoes. That is definitely still a possibility. You look at the risks and it only shows 5%, but again, that's a 5% chance within a 25-mile radius of any one given point. So if you live in here and if you live in this area and you kind of just put a dot right over your house, there's a 5% chance that you would be in the 25-mile radius of a tornado. So it's kind of confusing, but that's how they do it, and it does start to make a little bit more sense the more you get accustomed to it. We don't have a huge risk of hail, and the wind outlook, we're looking at about a 15% risk of wind damage within that area. Same rules apply, so that's also within a 25-mile radius, meaning that there will probably be some wind damage, but if you were to pick any one given point on this map, a 25-mile radius, there's a 15% chance that there's some wind damage within that radius. Here's a look at the day 3 outlook for the Northeast, and they don't have any of the tornado risks or hail risk or wind risks out just yet. They only put those maps out for day 1 and day 2, but they at least put up the marginal risk for much of the Northeast. So that includes much of New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland, Virginia, DC, and Delaware as well. So that entire area under a marginal risk, which usually you would only see a general thunderstorm risk be put up. It's not too crazy for them to put up a marginal risk on day 3, but it at least signifies that they might put up a slight risk once we come to day 1 or day 2. So that's just something that you want to pay attention to. I'm not expecting this to completely stay as a marginal risk. I think there may be some areas that they push up to a slight risk, but either way, I'm not expecting this to be a huge event, especially for the Northeast. Most of that should stay into the Ohio and Tennessee valleys. So let's start to time this out for you guys, and we're going to use the NAM model, which is the North American model. It's a high resolution model, and it's very good when it comes to the severe weather. So I like to use it. You're going to see me use this a lot when we come to the winter time and we're within 72 hours of an event, but it's especially handy when it comes to severe weather. I think that's really its specialty. It can really pick out where these thunderstorms are going to be. So as we go to Friday morning, so tomorrow morning, we're dealing with some isolated convection into Indiana and then maybe down into Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee. Nothing major at this point, nothing to really be worried about at all. It's really just rain, maybe mixed in with a little bit of thunder, but in terms of tornadic activity, nothing just yet. Once we get into the early afternoon hours, though, it will start to heat up. So this would be by 4 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, and you can see that we have some severe weather and some storms lining up for Kentucky and Indiana, and that would be for southern Indiana, and then we have also maybe a bit more severe weather into southern Ontario and southern Michigan, although I'm not expecting that to be awfully dangerous at all. I think most of the dangerous or quote-unquote dangerous weather would be down there in southern Indiana, Kentucky, western Tennessee, southwestern Ohio, most likely. So this is probably going to be your zone. You can maybe extend that a little bit further east to extend these areas, but this is where I have the most concern in terms of the severe storms. It's not really that much of a concern as you get further to the north. So you're starting to see these storms line up from Arkansas to about Kentucky with fairly high severity. This would be by around 7 p.m. Central Time on tomorrow evening. And you can see that we still have those storms lining up. They are fairly strong, but they will start to weaken once they continue to plow on east. So once they basically get east of Nashville, they will start to weaken quite a bit. You're not going to be dealing with as much ferocity to some of these storms. Part of that is due to it already being nighttime by this point, so you're not dealing with as much daytime heating still lingering on. This is at 10 p.m. Central Time, so sun's way down. Probably 3 hours or 4 hours have gone by when it's still dark, meaning that you're going to be having quite a bit of time for the surface to cool down, and with that it'll also cool down these storms quite a bit. So you're not going to be dealing with as much severity to these storms as you go into the evening hours. So they start to break apart as they move across the Appalachians, mainly turns into a plain rain once you get east of Columbus, and then that's going to continue to move on to the east east, again, we're not really dealing with anything too strong, but watch out for this little band on the easternmost flank as you're starting to see that develop into the northeast. So we're going to have to go over to the lower resolution NAM 12km model because the NAM 3km only goes out to 60 hours, but this one goes out, I believe, to 84 hours. Now, it's not really going to show you how strong the storms are going to be, but this line right here, this is as of late Saturday night. So we're talking about Saturday night around 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock. Actually, it's probably closer to 9 or 10 o'clock for the for Eastern time. So that's when that would be moving into areas like New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. If you're talking about that kind of empty space that was left behind that we didn't get to see on the model, if you live within this band right here, you're probably looking at somewhere around 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock when you would be dealing with the severe storms. And then if you live west of there, it's going to be mainly in the form of a plain rain, nothing really severe, but that would happen mainly for the first half of Saturday and maybe late on Friday evening. So that's kind of how you would time that out. Now, something that you want to see is that we do have a inverted trough right here. So we do have kind of this V shape within the ISO bars, and that's indicating that you do have a line of convection in the upper atmosphere, which is translating down to the surface. So your low pressure is all the way up here in Quebec, but it is bringing down a line of storms all the way into the mid-Atlantic. So it's a fairly wide-ranging storm. It eventually moves into New England as a much weaker system, but you will have some training thunderstorms coming off of the Atlantic. So if you live in areas like coastal Maine, you may want to watch out for the isolated chance of some rather strong storms. I don't think it'll be anything tornadic or anything like that, but you might be dealing with a bit of heavy rainfall because the wind flow is going to be coming out of the south. So it's kind of like what you see in the Great Lakes if you live in upstate New York or northwestern Pennsylvania or northeastern Ohio, or if you live over in Michigan or even northern Wisconsin. You guys deal with the lake effect in the wintertime in terms of snowfall, where you have the winds coming in from the west and they blow over the lakes and they bring in snowfall. You're basically going to be dealing with the same thing, but in the form of rainfall, and it's instead of the Great Lakes, it's going to be over the Atlantic. So you're going to be dealing with strong southerly winds, and that's going to be pushing in that rain over to the Gulf of Maine. So you guys might be dealing with some extra rainfall that areas further to the west are not going to be dealing with. So that's just one thing that I want to point out. If you live in Maine, or even if you live up in New Brunswick, Canada, Nova Scotia, you guys might be dealing with also a little bit of that Atlantic effect where you have that rain coming off of the ocean. So that's going to move off to the east, and then by Sunday morning, pretty much everything is said and done with. If we look at the Cape values for Friday, so this is the convective available potential energy for Friday afternoon. You can see that we do have quite a bit available. We have about 1 to 2,000 over a good portion of the Ohio Valley. So we're dealing with quite a bit available to the storms. If we go over to the high temperatures for Friday afternoon, you can see they'll be into the mid and upper 70s, so that's high enough. You really don't need them to be into the 90s at this time of year. You only need them to be above 65 for most events. So when you're in the mid 70s, the upper 70s, that's well above what you would typically need. And this is all for Friday, by the way. So if we move this over to Saturday, you can see that we have the Cape values, which are not as high. We only have them up near maybe 400 to at most maybe 800 or 900 JKG, which is not a whole lot, but given the size of the storm, we're not expecting a whole lot in the northeast anyway. So we are dealing with a sizable amount of energy available. It's going to be a very narrow band, so you're not going to be dealing with an expansive area of high energy. It's going to be pretty much the areas that are just right to the east of that line of storms. And if we look at the high temperatures for the northeast, you're also dealing with highs that are going to be in the mid 70s, but in those elevated areas, you'll only get up maybe into the mid 60s. So a little bit different than what's in the Ohio Valley and the Tennessee Valley, but still you'll be getting at least into the lower 70s for a lot of these spots, and even for the majority of the areas, you're going to be into the upper 70s as well. well. Here's a look at the dew points in the Northeast, and you can see these will actually be something that could help out the storms quite a bit. We have dew points that are going to be along the eastern seaboard above 60, which is basically that threshold number, and then they'll even get up near 62, 63, or even 64 degrees. So that's definitely high enough to see some severe weather. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. So if you have any special requests for videos, this video actually was requested by a viewer yesterday, and I checked the email after I already had all the maps prepared for yesterday's video, where we were talking about the possibility of a colder November. But if you ever have those requests, I'm probably actually going to make a video on whatever topic you're talking about. So if you ask me to do it, maybe that'll kind of favor me to do that video over another topic that I might have been thinking about. Yesterday I was thinking about doing, for the next day, which would be today, I was thinking about doing another video on the potentially colder temperatures in the east, because there really was not a lot going on. That email notified me to the possibility of some severe weather in the east, and I ended up making a video on it for today. So there's actually a fairly good likelihood that if you just give me an email, I'll probably make a video on whatever topic you ask me for. I'm not always going to do that, because sometimes if it's for a very localized area, it's not really going to be suitable for the channel. If you're talking about something that's only going to affect your small part of the state, that's probably not going to be really that good for the YouTube channel, considering that people from all around the country watch. So I want to give as much information for a broader audience. But if it is something like this event where it's going to cover multiple states and a fairly wide region, then I'll certainly make a video on that. So if you have anything like that, leave me an email. Also, if you have any weather photos, send them in, especially in the wintertime when we get snow, or even in the fall when we're getting the changing leaf colors. Just leave an email. Leave an email to me, send those over, and I might feature your photos in the video. And then also, if you have any personal forecast requests, if you have any questions about the video, just leave a comment down below, and I'll be responding within a couple hours of you posting that. So I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Goodbye.